You are listening to Know You're Crazy. My name is Susan Denee. We all have crazy. What separates us is how we choose to deal with it. I'm going to be delivering engaging and actionable tools to own your crazy, treat your crazy, and turn it into your own superpower. I hope that you walk away from this show feeling the power and strength within you. And never forget to enjoy your journey because you are worth it. Everyone, welcome to the Know You're Crazy show. My name is Susan Denee, and you are listening to Emotional Recovery in the Raw. And today I'd like to think that maybe I'm going to be talking a little bit about spirituality recovery in the raw. How does that pertain to advocating when in fear? Advocating for yourself when in fear. And that's what I'm going to begin talking about here in just a moment. Please let me just share with you, if you are interested in any type of self-development coaching, high performance or emotional elevation, feel free to check out my website at susandenee.com. You can reach out to me by email on my site, and I'd be more than happy to have a discussion with you to find out if we would be a great fit. Now, it's been a while since I've had a show. In fact, I think it's been a couple months. I feel like my whole life has transformed during that time. Life has its way of ebbing and flowing, gains, losses. And so, as many of you, I'm also in a new chapter of my life. And as I'm in a new chapter of my life, I'm interviewing and I'm speaking with new individuals. And what has come up for me in that process is good old-fashioned fear. If you are familiar with fear and how it works in your life, and you have pretty much studied fear and how it shows up in your life, you may have heard of the phrase, we are either scared of what we don't have, or we are scared of what we are going to lose. We are scared of what we are not going to get, or we are scared that we are going to lose something that we have. Those are usually the two facets of fear. And then, of course, the opposite of fear is love, and love is loaded with its own definition and its own perspective. So we're just going to leave that one a little bit alone today. I may touch on it a little bit throughout the show, but my primary focus is when you are in a life transformation, when you are looking to change gears, shift it up, and you find yourself riddled with a little bit of fear. I mean, what are the different areas in life that you may be changing it up in? Sometimes it could be career change. It might be relationship change. It might be demographic change. Perhaps you're moving from one area of the world or the state or this, wherever to another. Maybe you have apprehension around that. Many folks are in the transitional age range, right? So you go from maybe it's a younger person moving into the college years, going out and being independent. Middle-aged folks who are in the middle of their career, towards the end of the career life cycle, and they are looking at engaging in a new arena themselves. What does this look like to leave a career after decades of experience and venture on into a new lifestyle? What does that lifestyle look like? What may it be for me? Goal setting in the middle of all this, you got to ask yourself, man, are we honest with ourselves about how fear shows up? And the key question is, how do we advocate for ourselves in such a way that our confident selves, our divine selves, are shown the best of us versus allowing fear, and I've done shows on doubt, to creep in and keep us from doing what we desire. Ultimately, and this is where the show is going to go today, you are the authority in your life. You are the only authority in your life. The focus of my show today is going to be sharing about authority, how it shows up for you, how we give our authority away, how we gain authority, how we remind ourselves what our authority is, and how that will work in our lives in order to shape, develop a new future for us. Now, I was reading recently about the idea of leftovers when it comes to life. If you're familiar with any of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, he does a lot of work or a lot of sharing and speaking on the idea of trying to reframe your life so that you're not living your past into your future. And that's kind of what I'm talking about when I'm starting to go down the avenue of authority and how it shows up and how have I been negotiating my authority and how am I not walking within my own? Because what I was reading about the leftovers in life is it's like a meal. If you're constantly staring at what you ate yesterday, you're likely going to repeat that meal over and over and over. And let's face it, leftovers get old, they get stale. Doesn't sound exciting when you got leftovers, but what you know what is exciting? When you decide to have a new dinner, when you decide to learn a new recipe, when you decide to go out to a new restaurant, when you decide to sit down with new people for that dinner. It's creating the new with life and putting an end to the leftovers. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. And I'm pretty on fire about this. I don't know, it's probably just where I'm at in my life, personal life. We've had some transition as both my elderly parents are now on the other side, and what that has brought up for me. And then just where I'm at in my life and the different transitions that I'm going through and the goal setting that I'm starting to establish in my life for my next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, what that looks like for me and the different changes. And I will tell you through all of it, if I lose what's going on here, authentically, authoritative, advocacy, all of that, then I'm going to be in for probably an adventure or an experience that I do not feel is fulfilling or satisfying. And that is why I'm doing the show today, because we are our worst enemy at times, aren't we? And at the root of that is that good old-fashioned fear. So I'm going to start out by explaining, what do I mean by standing within your authority? You see, anything that you see, you have a relationship with. And what do I mean by that? Anything that is in your life, anything that you see in front of you, you have a relationship with. And what determines that relationship is what your perspective is about that thing. So for example, I have a really good friend of mine, and her and I are different in how we perceive birds. That's right, birds. If I look at a little bird, even as I'm describing it, can you tell? I think they're cute. I think they're an example of nature, so free-willed, able to fly, be freedom. So I will look at birds and I will love colorful birds and baby birds and you name it. Crows, I think, are cool just because they have such attitudes. They demand to take control of whatever space they're in. They harass my dogs outside like, wow, they're bold. It's like, I have this appreciation for birds. So my relationship to birds is that. My friend, however, can't stand birds. When she looks at a bird, she's like, they're gross, they're nasty. I don't want their poop on my deck. I don't want anything to do with birds. So her relationship with birds is different. And so when we get to talking about things, especially in this regards of authority, your relationship is unique to you with anything and everything about you. And what is determining the quality or the experience or whatever that is about your relationship with everything you see will always come down to your perception. And perceptions, as you know, are always individual because they come from our background, they come from our lifestyles, they come from our beliefs. My past and my life up to this point is probably 99% different than yours. All right, so everything that you visualize, or not even visualize, but everything that you're experiencing, your perimeters, your life, you have a distinct relationship to it. Now, here's the good news. When you decide to transform, and another word for transform is going to be when you decide to renew your life in a brand new direction, the good news is you get to choose how you perceive things. You get to choose how you perceive things. So when I'm talking about the authority that you have in your life, I am sharing and talking to you about your ability to decide a new perspective whenever it suits you. All right. And so that is where the responsibility of your authority will lie, is in the perception that you decide for yourself, that no one else is going to be responsible for that but you. And yes, this can open up a whole can of worms, and I'll be talking about all of it, because how do we do that and still play nice with others? Is that what you're thinking? Like, oh, it'd be nice to have that authority. It'd be nice to change my perception, but I can't change my perception because of, or I can't change my perception because they. And so everything that we think that we are walking in our world with our own authority, we have actually, in a lot of ways, given it over to other people, other places, other situations, historically things that have already been created way before we came into this existence. And we make a conscious decision every day to turn it over to somebody else. I'm talking about how do you regain the authority, bring it back to you, and start having a brand new experience to renew the path of the life that you are headed in right now. All right. So the authority that I speak of, here we go. Authority is to decide that everything agreed by you, by the small self, were creations once made upon a time that don't require you to adhere to them. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm pretty sure you can filter this. We have a small self, and my small self will be attached to the conditions in my environment. And then I'm going to determine my own level of peace and happiness based on how I feel about those conditions. In fact, I'm going to judge those conditions, and I'm going to ask those conditions, are you performing in the way that I need you to perform in order for me to feel better? As soon as I place my emphasis on anything and everything around me to determine how I feel better, maybe it's the amount of money I make, maybe it's the house that I live in, maybe it's the relationship that I'm in, are all these things performing to the level that I need them to perform at in order for me to feel peace and happiness? That is the small self. That is the small self. Go the opposite. What would be the divine self? What would be the self that says, I see divine in all around me. I see the universe working out to my benefit consistently and constantly. I am walking more in a position of faith than I am fear. That would be the divine self. So you've got small self on one degree or one end. You've got divine self on the other end. And maybe you call this your highest self. Maybe you, whatever it is that you want to label it, at the end of the day, you've got a small self and you've got a large self. We'll just go small, large, go small, large. Your authority lies in the ability to be decisive about which one you want to feed. We've all probably heard the story about the wolf, the bad wolf, the good wolf. I think that's the story. Or whatever, which one you're feeding is the one that's going to grow. Well, your authority lies in your decisiveness in order to decide which one do I want to feed and which area of growth am I going to go ahead and focus in. Fulfilling your ownership of your experience in this vibrational plane of life, hopefully I'm not losing some of you, means that you are going to walk in your full authority. And if you decide to lean into your small self, what that will mean eventually is that you are requiring, remember those conditions, you're requiring others to be a certain way, to behave a certain way, and you are placing your intention upon others, upon things, upon places. You are the only one that is going to be responsible for your joy and your experience, not them. And so what I'm going to do here shortly is I'm going to take a break. And when I come back, I'm going to start talking about how do we renew our authority? How do we take our authority back? How do I even catch that I'm giving it away? And if you've been listening to me for a while, this is the part of the show where I'm going to give you specific ideas and suggestions on if you feel like you've been leveraging your highest self for who you want to be and you've been living in a small self, then this part after the break is going to be the side of the show where you're going to want to pay attention and then perhaps write down some suggestions, because this is where the action items are going to come into play as I start to teach you on how you take your authority, how you renew your authority, and how you walk within it every single day so that your highest self is running your life show and not your lowest self. All right, so having said that, we will be back shortly and I will be going into specifics. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Know You're Crazy show. My name is Susan Denee, and you are listening to Emotional Recovery in the Raw. And today I'd like to say spiritual recovery in the raw. The reason I say that today is because I'm talking about how to own your authority, how to take back your authority, and how to walk in your divine self versus your small self. That's the topic today. Advocating for yourself while in fear can be a thing. Sometimes we don't even understand where fear is showing up for us. We learn to ask ourselves, what am I afraid of losing, or what am I afraid of not getting? That's a nice beginning to getting to the root of what we're scared of. Sometimes fear will show up because our behaviors will exhibit the fear. Sometimes we become possessive in our fear. Sometimes we become yelling in our fear. We're angry when we get fearful. Sometimes we will overspend in our fear. Sometimes sexual attraction will show up while we're fearful. And we'll be thinking that it's the cause over here, but really in another area of our life, we're experiencing a tremendous amount of fear. How we choose to express our fear under stressful situations or just life in general is a symptom. It's a symptom of what I like to say, sometimes a bigger spiritual dilemma. And that is why today I'm talking about the word authority, advocacy, and really learning, how do I take my authority back and how do I walk within my divine self versus my small self, and learn to have faith and trust in something that is bigger than me, in a universe that is bigger than me, but also in just humanity and love and understanding that everything's going to be okay. Now, for those of you who are intellectuals out there being la, 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 all this love and guru stuff, all this foo-foo stuff, I like practicality. I like keeping it real. And so this next part of the show is I'm going to start to go into some different things that you can spot within yourself to find out, am I living in my lowest self? Would I like, and do I need to gain back my authority? And so I'm going to open up with what would be the symptoms of living in your lowest self. Now, I've talked about some of the behaviors that may show up when you're in fear, but what would be the symptoms? All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about the symptoms of when you are absolutely giving away your authority. And you know what comes with symptoms? The best way to spot a symptom, think about it when you're sick. Feel like crap. You don't want to do anything. What do? You feel less than. You feel bad. The very first symptom of giving away your authority, and by authority, once again, what I'm reminding you of is when you negotiate who you truly want to be, what you truly want to say, and how you truly want to show up, for fear of it's going to cost you something, or fear of somebody's going to judge you for it. Sometimes one of the symptoms of when we do this is a feeling of doubt. I like to say sometimes when I'm coaching individuals and they'll be in a relationship scenario where this is coming up for them, they're caught in that feeling of, this really feels crazy right now, but am I crazy, or is this just part of the relationship growth? Like, why do I feel so uncomfortable when I advocate for myself, or when I want to say something, but then I leverage it, or I'm afraid I'm going to upset the other person, or I'm not being considerate enough of the other person's feelings. Like, how do I know I'm not causing any damage here? So that feeling of insecurity or that feeling of doubt is one of the first symptoms that you'll experience when you are leveraging your authority within your own life. And I'm not talking about you're doing this or somebody's doing it to you. This is all going to always come back on you, because you are the only one that can navigate the joy in your life. You are the only one that's going to be able to change this. No matter what, you are responsible for the decisions in your life. And so if you've been listening to me for a while, I'm always going to push back on you, regardless of what's going on in the relationship. And I will always give a caveat. There is no place for emotional or physical or sexual abuse in anyone's life. So if that is part of your experience, please seek professional help. I'm talking about the individuals who engage in some sort of relationship. And I'm not talking just intimate relationships. I'm referring to professional relationships, friendships, not intimate. Everything you do in life, everything you do is going to involve someone or something at some point, right? Like someone. We're just going to lean on someone. Either you're going to be doing business with someone, maybe you're purchasing a house, you're going to be doing business with people. You are constantly in communication with other people, constantly. And so when you negate that feeling that you are not being your authentic self, and you have all these reasons why, that is the first symptom of negotiating your authority. That is the first symptom. All right, I'm going to go to another symptom before I get into, oh, yeah, this is one of my favorites. And then I'm going to go into some solutions around both of these. All right. So the first symptom is you feel the doubt, you feel that you don't speak your truth, you're doing something different. The second symptom of when you are leveraging your authority, and this one's going to specifically be more in relationship with individuals, but you could also do this if you're talking to a girlfriend about some of your behaviors. What am I talking about? You over-explain everything. You make a decision, and then you explain why you've made the decision. Or somebody has placed their intention on you, and I will go more into that here in a little bit. And what I mean by that is somebody has placed what they think you need to be for them, what they think you should be for them. They have defined what your role is to them in their life. And when they express that, and you get that sense of unease, and you attempt to make a decision, but you're caught off guard, kind of like, is that true for me or is that not true for me? You then overly explain your position. You feel like you need to justify anything and everything that you're doing. This can happen in the workplace. When I was talking about if you're hanging out with your friends and you purchase something, or maybe you've been in the habit of purchasing a few things, and then you overly explain why you felt you needed to do that. So the second symptom I'm talking about is over explaining everything you do. So just stop and think about why you would do that. Doubt. Proving yourself. Feeling that the decision you made needs to be explained because somehow you might have done the wrong thing and you don't want somebody to think that. Or over explaining or fear of somebody's not going to understand you. That used to be one of mine. The fear of being misunderstood, the fear of making a mistake might do it. Always overly explaining why you do what you do. And when we do that is absolutely turning over our authority to something or someone. And we walk away from the divine self, the knowing self, not the thinking self. The divine self is the knowing self. The small self is more in the ballpark of the overthinking self. I'm sure there's some divine thinking going on in there somewhere, but I'm talking about when we really get to we're at the extreme of the overthinking self, when we have already decided to over-explain everything that we are, everything that we do, and why we do it. When we feel the need to explain it. A really good sick codependent, I'm just going to say it like it is, would be somebody who's going to overly explain their partner's ill behavior, right? Overly explain and justify for somebody else. Well, that could be a symptom of definitely not living in our own authority, but placing intentions upon other people and then trying to over-explain it. So there's this range of different possibilities on why you would do this and why you would show up like that. So what are the solutions? What are the solutions? Okay, Susan, we've got, okay, we're aware now, we're aware. And you might be relating to yourself, I do it here, I do it here, I do it here. Okay, so now what is the solution? Because we can stare at the problem all day long. I simply just talk about the problem in order to bring your awareness to it. Most of the individuals that work with me at some point are going to be talking about their relationship and feeling dissatisfied with the other person's behavior, or questioning what their own position is within the relationship. And they get all confused about it. And this can be on the professional area, the intimate, like I said, all areas of relationship. So this often comes up. So what is the solution? So one of the solutions I'm going to talk about, literally, to me, a lot of times, if we just practice the words that we use to communicate with another person, we will live in our authority more often than not. I had a client at one point who was in a huge transition in their life. They had lost somebody very important to them. They had passed away. Their career had changed. They had taken on a new relationship. There was a huge transition going on. And this person, when they wanted to talk to their partner, they had all these thoughts and concerns and fear. And this person was actually at the core a very confident individual. But when it came to communicating to their partner about some of the changes they wanted to make or some things that they needed, they would just trip over their words. They wouldn't know how to do it. So what we literally worked on was scripting. And that may sound like, oh my God, I can't script with somebody. Sometimes we are just out of practice with how to communicate. We don't practice communication all the time, do we? We just kind of fall into it. We let our feelings and our emotions lead it. And then we do that for so many years that we never create the ability to effectively say what we need to say. So right now, I'm literally going to be working with you on just words and what you can say in order to gain back your authority in the middle of a conversation or in the middle of an upset so that you can start to understand yourself a little bit more. And these words, in my opinion, were divinely inspired. And just by saying them out loud, half a dozen times a day, for even a couple days, well, you'll start to feel what happens as they overcome you and you say the words. Because one thing is me just saying the words to you. Another thing is when you sit and you say them out loud to yourself. Another tip that I would give, whenever I've spoken to a client or a woman I've been mentoring in sobriety that gets emotionally hijacked in the middle of the storm and they're overcome with fear. Have you ever been overcome with fear and anxiety to the point where it's almost like a panic attack and you can't pull out of it? And it just seems, everything seems overwhelming. Everything seems really big and you can't get to the bottom of it. This right here, saying words out loud and hearing yourself repeat them, is a confidence builder in the middle of the storm. And so as I share these words with you, you can come up with your own words. But a lot of times what happens is when we lose ourselves and we lose our authority and we have negated our beliefs and we have gone way off track. We're way out in the field. We don't even know where we're at. We're out there. We're out in the field. We're lost. We feel like shit. These are the words that are going to help bring you back, because reminding yourself of the divine self, of the self that is really aspiring to do great things and really appreciates who you are, that's where the sweet stuff is at, right? Like that is where the sweet stuff is at. So one of the phrases that I will teach people to do, especially in intimate relationships, because if it's fragile anywhere, it's in intimate relationships, because if we're going to get fearful that we're going to lose something that we have or that we're not going to get something we want, just think about it. It shows up in intimate relationships, probably more so than others. And I always like to say, or my husband likes to say, if an intimate relationship can learn to stay in the ring long enough and get through some of these hurdles, it'll be blissful. But most relationships will hit this wall at some point. And it's when each individual decides to try to get more out of their partner than they deserve or even are divinely inspired to receive. And one partner's got the walls up and saying no, the other partner's thinking they deserve it, and then all hell breaks loose, and now you've got a relationship in turmoil. And so these are some of the words that will come up in an intimate, or these words will help you in intimate relationships if you hit that wall. And so it'll help each partner regain their authority. And by regaining authority, remember, I'm not talking about against your partner. I'm talking about walking within your best self. And anytime you walk within your best self, your divine self, you are never taking away from somebody. Think about that. If you are in your best self, are you ever going to take away from somebody? No. Do you think I would offer somebody more as my best self or my lowest self? Okay. The more intrinsic work that you do as an individual, and the more awareness and aware consciousness that you bring to your life, the better off your relationships are always going to be, because they're going to have the divinely inspired self of you versus the small self who's reaching and grabbing out of fear. And anytime we reach and grab out of fear, we are pretty much guaranteed there's going to be a train wreck at the end of that experience. There just is. Okay, what are the words? Okay, let's say you are in a discussion in an intimate relationship, and for whatever reason, one partner is wanting more than the other one can give, the one that can't give it. Now, I'm not even sure what we're talking about here as far as giving, because it can change dramatically in a relationship. Usually it's going to be some type of disagreement over what one thinks is needed to make the relationship better. Sometimes it can be over spending. Sometimes it can be over logistics of parenting. Sometimes it can be over values, when values collide, like one person has one value and another one has another, morals, like we kind of get all big, we're all bringing our baggage to the table. You know what I mean? When we're in an intimate relationship, I think our mom and dad may be in that relationship for a little bit with us until we learn not to do that. So this phrase right here is learning to say to your partner, that is my position and I'm okay with that. That's how I feel, and I'm okay with that. Feelings cannot be negotiated within a relationship. We are okay to feel how we feel. Learning to say, I am okay with that, those words right there return you to a state of confidence and returns you to where you know your authority is at. An example, I was coaching an individual one time in the past, and they had a conflict within the relationship regarding parenting. And this was a blended family, and there happened to be a big blow up about parenting styles, and one parent's believing more discipline's needed, old school beliefs around whether a spanking was necessary or not, and then the other parent was like, I'll never do that, this is not my position. And so both people loved each other very much, but they came to this head of disagreement. And the one parent who said, I would, this is my path, different disciplining, I would never believe in spanking, that type of thing, was just simply able to say to them, that is how I feel about this, and I'm okay with that. And realigning with that position and realigning with her experience, as a couple, they were able to come together and learn to parent side by side down the road. But that line right there, and I'm okay with that, will reassure you in the middle of the storm that what you are thinking and what you are doing is okay, right? This is not to be used in a slap your face kind of fight. No, slap your face, I don't mean literally. It's not to be used like, well, that's the way it is, and I'm okay with that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you have a disagreement with somebody and your gut is telling you that you are about to leverage your values, leverage your morals for some reason, and you don't want to do that because this person has set an intention for you or set an intention over a situation that doesn't feel healthy to you, and you're starting to leverage yourself because of their influence and their intention on you, and you need to be reminded, oh, that's right, I do feel this way, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. And take back that authority instead of voluntarily handing it over to somebody else and then being resentful at them for being who they are. Right? This is all about ownership. This is all about you owning your side of the road. Okay, another line you can use in the middle of the storm. And this one you've all heard before. All you got to do is pull it out of the toolbox. We will just have to agree to disagree. Let's just call it neutrality. Like, we are not going to find a solution in the middle of this. We need to let the air out of the balloon of tension, the balloon of argument that we're in the middle of, and we just need to agree to disagree. And I mean, if you've ever said that in the middle of a heated argument or in the middle of like really, going back and forth, everybody's fighting for everybody in the conversation is fighting for the dominance, and you say that, it immediately diffuses the situation. because it's a way of acknowledging we are two individuals who are not going to agree with that. And I'm okay with that. So we're going to have to agree to disagree right now. And I'm okay with that. Like just giving yourself a little bit of that boost to help get you through the heated argument. Okay, another one. I appreciate your honesty. I just don't agree that it's best for me. And I'm okay with that. I appreciate your honesty. It's not what works for me. And I'm okay with that. Always adding that you're okay with that means that the other person, and sometimes they're not doing it on purpose, they're just doing what they do. They have a full clarity behind your words that you're not going to negotiate this, and there is no room for doubt. That's what those words do for you, is it conveys to the other individual, there's no room for doubt here. I am completely secure in my position. Now, for anybody out there who's wondering, well, what if my partner's behavior, I'm not okay with that, and what if? So there's always going to be room in a relationship if we're specifically talking about intimate relationships, and this can be professional. I mean, really, and I've done shows on this, what are the agreements within the relationship? And so what are the agreements about the topics that we're talking about? What are the agreements that we have? What are our values of a relationship? What type of things have we agreed to up to this point? Now, those agreements might have to be readdressed. If this is a constant battle where somebody's always having to be okay with that and the other person is always disappointed, then there's some agreements that have been made. Sometimes there's silent agreements that haven't been talked about enough. Sometimes there've literally been verbal agreements that now the circumstances have changed and the relationship needs to provide room of flexibility, is what I like to say, to allow change to come in so that both people can come together and make new agreements so that they're both okay with whatever that is. And so, this is kind of like when you get into talking about there's all these different things that you can think about. I am attempting to stay specifically to you as an individual, to spot check when you have given over your authority and stepped away from your divine self, and you're walking in a relationship of the lower self. And so that is the reason, or that's actually my goal today, is to stay on topic with that. But keep in mind, I'm aware that there's all these other areas that can, open up under this. All right, so now I'm going to talk about, for this last part of the show, and then I might share some personal experiences or some different experiences to give examples of this. I want to talk about what I was referring to when I was talking or mentioning about holding somebody else to your intention and what that means. And so what does it mean if I am held to the intention someone gives me unless I decide differently? And remember that authority equals decisiveness. Authority equals decisiveness. And so what does it mean when I give myself to somebody else's intention that they have decided for me? Think about that. How many times have you molded who you are because of what you think somebody else is desiring from you? Perhaps that somebody else is a very strong personality, a very demanding personality, the type of personality that can express disappointment very well. Have you ever had somebody like that in your life? That they are consistently disappointed with others and behaviors. So how do you deflect that intention that they have set for you and take back your authority? And so essentially, when you are witnessed by a person and you are being witnessed as far as what they want you to be, how they want you to behave, what they need you to be in order for them to feel satisfied. That's what I'm talking about when I come into, am I walking into somebody else's intention right now? Or am I culpable to some behavior that I need to take a look at in order to benefit this relationship? The flip side of that is, where am I placing my intention on others and expecting them to show up a certain way so that I feel satisfied in my life and so that I feel fulfilled in my life? I will share with you that the more you complain about a relationship in your life, when you have gotten to the point where you are habitually complaining about somebody not doing it your way or not behaving your way, you're in a consistent place of disappointment. And ultimately, either somebody is placing their intention on you and you haven't caught it to the point where you have learned to stand within your authority and say out loud, I am who I am and I'm okay with that, or starting to really stand up for that divine self. And so you are caught off guard by this person consistently throwing their intention on you. Let me remind you that you're still responsible. It doesn't matter. Everybody's throwing their intentions around to some degree. Wouldn't you agree with that? We all are. You know, we might intend for somebody to treat us with respect. We might, you know, if we employ individuals, we have all kinds of intentions we're probably throwing out there on them. You know, parenting situations, do you have intentions for your children that you are constantly throwing on them, and then they get all rebellious? They want to kind of deflect that and they get sassy and they push back. Yeah, because ultimately each one of us wants to live within our divine self. We want to do what we want, when we want, and how we like. And a truly fulfilling life, in my opinion, is somebody who does that without causing harm to others. You know, how do we push past those obstacles in our lives? And it's really about learning to live with our divine self and being okay with who we are in all aspects. But advocating for yourself is easier said than done, right? Advocating for yourself is easier said than done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a short break right now. And when I return, I'm just going to do a little bit of a recap of the show, probably give a few more suggestions what can I do if I'm being caught off guard by the intention that somebody has set for me? And how can I change my intentions for somebody else if I feel that this relationship isn't really working in the way that I would desire it to work? Those are some things that I'm going to address in the last 15 minutes of the show. So hang in there with me. When I return, I will go over those, and boy, the hour will be flying by. Be back shortly. Hey everyone, this is Susan Denee, and you're listening to the Know You're Crazy show as I dive into emotional recovery today, specifically talking about how do you advocate for yourself while in fear. How do you take back your authority within your relationships and within your life so that you can live from a place of divine self versus your small self? So have you ever felt small when you're in conversation with someone? You want to speak your truth, but you are convicted with fear of what will they think, or maybe should I withhold? Sometimes we're all held hostage to old beliefs and old ideas. And that's what the first part of this entire show has all been about. The first 45 minutes has literally been about, what is my authority? The authority is the ability to be decisive with who you are, to live your divine self, the knowing self, not the intellectual self, not the overthinker self. And when we're not in our authority is when it gets extremely uncomfortable. And so I covered some of the symptoms of what that might be like for you. The symptoms are usually a feeling from within when you are conflicted about your position in communication with another individual or an action that you're taking in your life. And this conflict will feel doubtful, it'll feel insecure, but yet there'll be kind of a side of you that's wondering, like, I don't know if I should be feeling this way. Like, it seems like I'm right. And we'll start judging it, and we'll be like, am I crazy, or is this really happening right now? Sometimes if you've been on the receiving end of somebody who has a shameful communication, you will often feel confused. And so what happens is you step away from your authority and what your own beliefs are and what your own opinions are, and you give them over to something else. And so you literally hand over your authority to somebody or something, some idea, something else, and you walk away from your divine self. So the top symptom of that is doubt. You'll get a feeling of doubt. Another symptom that I talked about was if you're somebody who's used to handing over your authority, you're going to overly explain why you do stuff. Yeah, overly explaining it. Well, this is why, as if to make the other person understand so that they are okay with your decision. And what I'd like to remind you of, it's never about the other person being okay with your decision. It's about you being okay with your decisions. No one's ever going to make you feel okay with your decision. You might have to feel okay about watching somebody be disappointed with your decision because it doesn't work for them, but you can still feel proud and stand within yourself, even in the face of disappointment of somebody else. Taking back that authority and feeling good within your own skin with your own decisions is part of this life journey. If we want to live divinely, then we must walk within our divine self and we must live in our truth. We negotiate our truth often when we are in fear. And that is another thing I talked about within the first 45 minutes is how the fear of losing what we have or fear of not getting what we want is really at the root of all these symptoms. And then I've gone into solutions. What are a couple things that I can do to regain my authority? Well, number one, in all my shows, I talk about the first layer of that solution is going to be to live in full awareness to the best of your ability. And awareness will grow. I like to say awareness is a blessing and it's a bitch all in the same, right? Because once we become aware, we can no longer close that door and we start to be accountable to our own thinking, our own actions, and our own behaviors. And I'm sorry, but sometimes I think about my younger years and I'm thinking, boy, ignorance was bliss. Felt like I could get away with stuff and not have to really deal with the emotional consequences. Today, not so much, but life is much more peaceful today. And so learning, number one, you have to learn to become aware of when you are turning your authority over and when you are negotiating. And you must be accountable to this because it's nobody else's fault. It's nobody else's fault. You are 100% responsible for your joy. That's it. Caveat to that, there is no place for physical, mental, or sexual abuse. If that is your story, then please seek professional help to have somebody help you out of that. But in the day-to-day relationships that you have in your life, whether that's professional, whether that's intimate, whether it's friendship, parental, you are responsible for your joy. Another solution, or actually a couple solutions that I shared about and how to get back your authority is practicing new words of communication. Often we give into a conversation and we lose our authority because we just don't know what to say. We're out of practice. It's actually kind of a skill set to learn how to communicate and how to advocate for yourself while in fear. That was the title of the show, Advocating for Yourself While in Fear. So work on your words. It's like I always feel like when I say that, you ever think like toddlers, like, oh, use your words. Well, as adults, we become stale. We get so used to saying whatever that we don't really expand and become consciously aware of a new way of communicating. And so one of the lines that I have given coaching clients, I personally have used that I have found very successful in taking back my authenticity, my authentic self, learning to live in my authority is that is my position and I'm okay with that. That is my experience and I'm okay with that. It's like a verbal acknowledgement out loud, not only to myself, but to the person or situation that I'm confronting, of reminding the room that I'm okay with that. And by saying I'm okay with that just literally means I have no contest with that. And I'm at peace with how I'm standing here. Now, what the other person does with that is not going to be my experience. And there's all kinds of if, ands, or what's about that. If you're in an intimate relationship and there's a lot of conflict or there's a lot of disagreement in different areas, by all means, reach out to my website, email me. Let's get a coaching session set up and find out, is there anything I can help you with in that? Because in the coaching sessions, we go way into depth about different things you can say, different communication styles that you can take on in order to change some of that. Another solution that I'm going to mention is yes, no is a complete answer. If you've been in the rooms of recovery at all and you've partaken in an Al-Anon program, this is one of the techniques that they teach, that yes, no is a complete answer. And it kind of goes in alignment with that overly explaining thing, right? And so if you're an over-explainer, this is a great baby step for you to take in just learning how to say yes, no, and leaving it be. Now, if you are somebody who justifies a lot and who explains a lot, that's going to be a very challenging exercise for you. So just realize it is challenging because once you become a habit of overly explaining why you do what you do, you're always going to want to overly explain. And I would encourage you to get to the root of why that's important to you, to always feel that you need to be heard to that degree. Okay? Don't over explain. All right. And then I'm going to wrap up with this today. Learning how to set healthy intentions for others so that you don't remain disappointed, but also what do you do when somebody else is placing their intentions on you? I've already given you the solution for that second part. What do you do when somebody is placing their intentions on you? Number one, be aware. Is this what's going on? Ask yourself the questions. Take a pause and take a look around. Look at the situation. Maybe wait for if it's a stormy situation, wait for that to calm down and revisit it when you've got some quiet time and really ask yourself, is that what's going on? Is somebody projecting their intentions onto me? And is that why I feel so uncomfortable? And if that is the case, then I need to learn my new words. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with my position. I'm okay with me. Learn to take back that authority. Learn to take it back because you have voluntarily given it up, and you're the only one that can bring it back. So number one is awareness. Number two is use new words of communication. And I will close with this. Why is it important to learn all of this? Because we are responsible for our lovely experience here in this lifetime. We can live from a divine, inspired life, or we can live from a small self that is dependent upon the relationships, the financial experience, all the conditions to bring us joy and happiness. But folks, here's the deal. This is an inside job. This life, this experience that we have here today, it's an inside job. And the more that we can walk within our own, the more that we can walk within our own experience, the happier that we're going to be, the more in joy that we're going to be. Okay? All right, so that is all I've got for today. If you are somebody seeking coaching or any corporate type of training, teaching on communication, motivation, all of the above, high performance, feel free to reach out to me at my website. You can email me at growthspurt@susandenee.com. I'd be more than happy to schedule a complimentary coaching session with you to find out if we would be a good fit, if this is something that sounds like it would work for you. Other than that, stand in your authority, live a joyful life, and have a great evening. I will see you in about 3 weeks for another show. Have a good one. You have been listening to Know You're Crazy.
Crazy.
And my name is Susan Denee. We are identifying, understanding, and treating your crazy one episode at a time. Tune in to transformationtalkradio.com. To connect with me or Growth Spurt Your Life, please visit susandenee.com. That's Susan Denee, DENEE.com.